Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 months, exploring systems far from Earth. This was what she loved most about command, the unknown waiting beyond every jump. "Captain, we're receiving multiple distress signals," said Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. Her voice was tight with concern. "From where?" Chen walked over to look at the display. The Kepler 442 system. 12 different worlds. All inhabited. The signals are strange. Torres frowned at her console. "They keep talking about gods and divine punishment." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Gods?" "Put it on speaker." The bridge filled with static. Then a desperate voice broke through. "Please, anyone who can hear this, the gods are angry again. They're taking our children for the sky temples. We've done nothing wrong, but they say we must be punished for our sins." Another signal overlapped the first. "The divine ones demand more tribute. Our crops fail, but they want twice as much food. How can we feed our families?" A third voice, barely audible. "They call themselves gods, but gods should show mercy. These beings only bring pain." Chen listened to more signals, her jaw tightening, with each one. Every message spoke of suffering, of beings who claimed to be gods demanding impossible tribute from worlds that clearly couldn't afford it. "Take us into the system," she ordered, "but keep us at the edge. I want to see what we're dealing with before we announce ourselves." The Prometheus dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's outer edge. What they saw made the entire bridge crew go silent. 12 worlds orbited the star, all showing signs of life, but around each planet hung massive metal structures, orbital platforms bigger than cities. Energy readings showed they were heavily armed and actively broadcasting to the planets below. "Those platforms are jamming all technological development." "On the surface," reported Dr. Marcus Webb, the ship's science officer. "Anytime someone down there tries to build something more advanced than basic tools, those stations hit them with some kind of suppression beam. They're keeping entire civilizations in the Stone Age," Chen said quietly. "On purpose." "Captain," Torres called out, "one of those platforms is moving toward us. It's huge." The platform was indeed massive, easily 10 times the size of the Prometheus. It moved with the slow confidence of something that had never been challenged. As it approached, it broadcast a signal on all frequencies. "Unknown vessel," came a voice that seemed to echo with artificial power. "You enter the domain of the Zethkari, the divine ones who rule these worlds. I am High Hierarch Vexthul, voice of the gods. You will explain your presence before the divine throne." Chen straightened her uniform. "Open a channel, Torres." "Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Prometheus. We received distress signals from this system and came to investigate. We're here to help if we can." There was a long pause. Then Vexthul's voice returned, sounding confused. "Help? You speak as if you have authority here. Do you not recognize the divine nature of those who address you?" "I recognize that you're an advanced alien species," Chen replied calmly. "I'd like to discuss the situation on the planets below. Some of your subjects seem to be suffering." "Subjects?" The voice now carried anger. "These are not subjects. They are the faithful, blessed to serve the gods. And you speak to the divine ones as equals. This is not possible." Dr. Webb looked up from his station. "Captain, I'm reading their technology. It's advanced, but not beyond our understanding. Plasma-based weapons, force field generators, basic matter manipulation. Impressive, but definitely not divine." Chen nodded. "High Hierarch Vexthul, I suggest we meet in person to discuss the situation. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Vexthul's voice rose. "There is no misunderstanding, mortal. You will bow before the might of the gods, or you will be purged like all heretics." The massive platform began to glow with energy. Weapon ports opened along its hull, revealing cannons that could destroy cities. "Captain," warned Torres, "they're charging weapons." "Shields up," Chen ordered calmly. "But hold fire. Let's see what they actually can do." A beam of pure energy lanced out from the platform, striking the Prometheus's shields. The ship shook, but the shields held easily. "Impressive light show," Chen said into the comm. "But I've seen better fireworks at Earth festivals." There was stunned silence from the alien ship. Finally, Vexthul spoke again, his voice less confident. "Your vessel? It should have been destroyed. No mortal ship can withstand divine power. Again with the divine thing, Chen sighed. Look, your technology is good, but it's not magic. Our shields are designed to handle energy weapons like yours. Dr. Webb was practically bouncing with excitement at his station. Captain, this is fascinating. Their plasma focusing system is really elegant, though I can see at least 3 ways to improve the energy efficiency. And their force field technology, it's like a more primitive version of our own deflector arrays. Did your subordinate just critique divine technology? Vexthul asked, sounding lost. Dr. Webb is our science officer, Chen explained. He studies technology for a living. Your stuff is interesting, but hardly beyond understanding. This cannot be, Vexthul muttered. For 3,000 years, all species have knelt before our power. They worship us as gods because they cannot comprehend our technology. Well, we can comprehend it just fine, Chen said. The question is, what are you going to do about the suffering on those planets? Those people are calling for help. They call for help because they are weak, Vexthul's voice cracked like a whip. The gods test them as is proper. Those who fail the tests prove they are unworthy of divine blessing. Chen's expression hardened. And what exactly do these tests involve? The faithful must provide tribute, food, materials, workers for the sky temples. They must remain pure without the corruption of advanced technology. They must accept divine judgment when they fail. This is the natural order. You're enslaving them, Chen said quietly. We are gods, Vexthul roared. We give meaning to their pathetic existence. Without us, they are nothing but animals scratching in the dirt. Chen looked around her bridge at her crew. Torres was monitoring 12 different worlds where billions suffered under these so-called gods. Dr. Webb was analyzing technology that was used to suppress entire civilizations. Engineer Kumar was calculating how many of those weapon platforms they'd need to disable to free the planets below. High Hierarch Vexthul, Chen said finally. I think you need to learn something about humans. What could mortals possibly teach, gods? That there's a big difference between being advanced and being right. Chen's voice was steel. And you're about to learn which one we are. The Zethkari platform began to pulse with more energy, calling more ships from across the system. They had ruled these worlds for 3 millennia without question. They had been worshipped and feared as gods, but they had never met humans before. Captain Chen stood on her bridge, watching alien ships gather like storm clouds. Her crew worked quietly around her, preparing for what might come. None of them had asked for this fight, but when they heard those desperate voices calling for help, the choice had been made. The gods were about to discover that some mortals refused to kneel. High Hierarch Vexthul stood in the command center of the Divine Retribution, his forearms working frantically at control panels. Around him, his crew moved with the practiced efficiency of beings who had never known defeat. For 3,000 years, they had been gods. Today, that certainty was cracking. Summon the faithful from all worlds, he commanded. They must witness the fate of heretics who dare challenge divine authority. Across the 12 planets, massive screens activated in city centers and village squares. Billions of beings looked up to see their gods preparing for war against a single alien vessel. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Captain Chen watched 6 more Zethkari ships arrive. Each one was larger than her own vessel, bristling with weapons that had kept entire worlds in terror for millennia. Captain, Dr. Webb called from his station, I'm detecting massive energy buildup on their lead ship. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be big. How big? Chen asked. Enough to crack a moon, Torres replied, her face pale as she read the sensor data. Vexthul's voice boomed across all frequencies. Behold, mortals of the unknown ship. Witness the power of the gods. The divine retribution turned toward the Yao, system's innermost world, a dead rock with no life to protect. Energy gathered in a weapon that had never been used at full power, reserved only for the most absolute demonstrations of divine wrath. The beam that lanced out was beautiful and terrible. It struck the small world and burned straight through, to the core. For a moment the planet held together. Then it cracked open like an egg, spilling molten rock into space. The screens on 12 worlds showed their gods turning a world to burning fragments with casual ease. On every planet, beings fell to their knees in terror and worship. Now do you understand? Vexthul asked the human ship. This is what defying gods brings. Bow down, and we may show mercy. Captain Chen stared at the destruction, her jaw tight. Dr. Webb, tell me you got good readings on that weapon. Every detail, Captain. Webb's voice was excited despite the circumstances. It's a focused antimatter beam channeled through a series of gravitational lenses. Extremely powerful, but the focusing array has to cool down between shots. They can't fire it again for at least 20 minutes. Antimatter channeling, Chief Engineer Kumar muttered from his station. Impressive, but hardly impossible. We could build something similar if we needed to. Vexthul's voice carried disbelief. Your crew is analyzing divine power. This is not possible. No mortal mind can comprehend the weapons of gods. Sure we can, Chen replied calmly. It's just directed energy on a large scale. Dr. Webb, what do you think of their focusing system? Webb perked up. Oh, it's quite elegant, though I noticed some inefficiency in the gravitational lens array. If they adjusted the field harmonics by about 12%, they could increase the beam coherence significantly. Also, that cooling system seems unnecessarily complex. A simple heat redistribution matrix would cut the recharge time in half. There was dead silence from the Zethkari ships. Did your subordinate just suggest improvements to divine weaponry? Vexthul asked weakly. Dr. Webb has a PhD in theoretical physics, Chen explained. He's always looking for ways to make things work better. Your technology is impressive, but it's still just technology. On the 12 worlds below, something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in 3,000 years, some of the Watchers were not trembling in fear. They were listening to the strange aliens who spoke of gods as if they were merely people with big weapons. Vexthul felt panic rising in his chest. This was not how first contact was supposed to work. New species were meant to see their power and immediately submit. They were supposed to beg for mercy, offer tribute, accept divine rule without question. You will submit, he roared. I will demonstrate divine power until you understand your place. Actually, Chen said, I have a better idea. Why don't you stop threatening people and start explaining why you think enslaving 12 worlds is acceptable? Enslaving? Vexthul's voice cracked. We do not enslave, we guide, we give purpose to meaningless lives. Without the gods, these creatures would accomplish nothing. From what I can see, they're not accomplishing much under your rule either, Chen observed. 12 worlds of intelligent beings kept at Stone Age technology levels. How is that guidance? While they talked, the Prometheus was busy. Stealth probes launched from hidden bays invisible to Zethkari sensors. They spread throughout the system, gathering information about the orbital platforms and the planets below. Dr. Webb studied the incoming data with growing anger. Captain, you need to see this. The platforms aren't just suppressing technology, they're actively harvesting resources. Every time a planet's population grows too large or too advanced, the platforms cull them back to manageable levels. Culling how? Chen asked, though she feared the answer. Orbital bombardment of cities. Targeted plagues. Sometimes they just take entire populations as workers for the sky temples. Those people are never seen again. Captain Chen closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her expression was harder than steel. High Hierarch Vexthul, she said into the comm. I've seen enough. You're not gods. You're slavers and murderers hiding behind fancy technology and religious nonsense. Blasphemy! Vexthul screamed. No mortal may speak thus to the divine. You will be made to understand. I will select one of the worlds below and demonstrate the cost of defying gods. The divine retribution began to turn toward the nearest inhabited planet. Its weapons powered up, not the world-cracking antimatter beam, but smaller weapons designed to kill cities one at a time. Target their capital, Vexthul commanded his crew. Let the heretics watch as divine justice falls upon the innocent. Perhaps that will teach them proper respect. On the bridge of the Prometheus, alarms began to sound. The Zethkari were targeting 8 billion people who had done nothing wrong except live under the rule of false gods. Captain, Torres said, quietly, they're actually going to do it. Chen looked at her crew. Torres at communications, her hands steady despite the fear in her eyes. Dr. Webb at science, still analyzing alien technology even as weapons powered up. Engineer Kumar at his station, ready for whatever orders might come. All of them far from home, facing an enemy that could destroy planets. All of them knowing exactly what they had to do. Red alert, Chen said calmly. All hands to battle stations. We're going in. Captain, Kumar said carefully, their ships outgun us 6-1, and they have those orbital platforms for support. I know the odds, Chen replied. But there are 8 billion people on that planet who are about to die for the crime of existing in the same system as us. We didn't come out here to let innocent people suffer. The Prometheus began to move, accelerating toward the planet as Zethkari weapons charged to full power. This is madness, Bexthul muttered, watching the human ships approach. They cannot hope to stop gods. What do they think they can accomplish? Captain Chen heard him through the open channel and smiled grimly. We're about to show you what humans accomplish when someone threatens innocent people, she said. You might want to take notes. The Prometheus streaked through space toward the inhabited world, her engines pushed beyond safe limits. Behind her, 6 Zethkari warships gave chase, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Ahead, orbital weapons platforms turned to face the approaching human vessel. 30 seconds to weapons range, Torres called out from her station. Captain Chen stood in the center of her bridge, watching the tactical display. The numbers were not good. 6 ships behind them, 12 weapons platforms ahead, and all of them focused on one human vessel. But between those weapons and the planet below were 8 billion innocent people who were about to die just to prove a point. All stations prepare for defensive action, Chen ordered. We're going to put ourselves between those weapons and the planet. Captain, Dr. Webb looked up from his console. Our shields can't handle that much concentrated fire. The platforms alone could destroy us. Then we better make sure they don't get the chance, Chen replied. How long do we have before they can fire? 90 seconds for the platforms, Torres reported. The ships behind us will be in range in 40 seconds. Hierarch Vexthul watched from his command center, confusion filling his mind. The human ship was not running. It was not trying to escape the system. Instead, it was deliberately placing itself in the most dangerous position possible. What are they doing? He asked his tactical officer. Unknown, Hierarch. Their course will place them directly between our weapons and the target world. Are they trying to surrender to beg for mercy? No, sir. They're raising shields and powering weapons. They appear to be preparing for battle. Vexthul stared at the display. In 3,000 years of rule, no species had ever done this. When the gods showed their power, lesser beings ran. They hid. They begged. They did not fly directly into the path of divine weapons to protect strangers. Perhaps they misunderstand, Vexthul said slowly. Open communications. The channel crackled to life. Human vessel, this is your final warning. Move aside immediately, or be destroyed with the heretics below. Captain Chen's voice came back steady and calm. Negative. We will not allow you to harm innocent people. You cannot stop us. We are gods. You're bullies with big guns, Chen replied, and bullies need to be stopped. On the bridge of the Prometheus, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for impossible situations, but this was beyond anything in the manual. Still, not one of them suggested running. 20 seconds to platform range, Torres announced. Launch all fighters, Chen ordered. Target their weapons arrays. We need to buy time. 12 small fighter craft launched from the Prometheus, streaking toward the massive orbital platforms. They were tiny compared to their targets, but they moved fast and struck hard. Direct hit on Platform 7, reported Lieutenant Hayes from the fighter squadron. Their primary weapon array is down. Platform 3 is returning fire, called another pilot. These things are heavily armed. Energy beams crisscrossed space as the fighters darted between the platforms like insects attacking giants. They couldn't destroy the massive structures, but they could damage weapon systems and draw fire away from the Prometheus. Incoming fire from behind, Torres warned. The Zethkari ships are in range. The first energy beams struck the Prometheus's rear shields. The ship shook but held together. Chen gripped her command chair as more shots followed. Shields at 80%, Kumar reported. But we're taking fire from multiple directions now. On the planet below, billions of beings watched the impossible scene playing out above their world. The strange alien ship was fighting gods to protect them. Many had never seen such a thing. Some began to wonder if gods could truly be fought at all. Return fire, Chen ordered. Target the closest platform. The Prometheus's weapons lanced out, striking one of the orbital stations. The alien structure shuddered under the impact, its shields flaring bright before collapsing. Direct hit, Webb called out excitedly. Their shield technology is impressive, but not beyond our weapons. We can hurt them. Vexthul watched in growing horror as his orbital platform took damage. The structure had been built to intimidate planetary populations, not to fight battles against equals. Its weapons were powerful, but its defenses were weaker than they appeared. All ships focus fire on the human vessel, he commanded. Destroy them now. 6 HFY warships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Prometheus lit up with deadly energy as beams converged on the human ship. Shields failing, Torres called out as the ship bucked under the assault. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 9. Emergency power to shields, Chen ordered. We need to hold the line. But even as she spoke, she knew they couldn't last long against such concentrated fire. The Prometheus was a tough ship, but she wasn't invincible. Then Dr. Webb looked up from his console with a sudden smile. Captain, I've been analyzing their weapons patterns. They're using rotating frequency modulation to prevent shield adaptation. Can you counter it? Better than that. I can use their own frequency patterns against them. If I route our shields through the deflector array and match their modulation exactly. Do it, Chen ordered. Webb's fingers flew over his controls. For a moment, the ship's shields flickered and failed completely. Every person on the bridge held their breath as enemy weapons fire streaked toward them. Then the shields snapped back, online, stronger than before. The HFY weapons struck the barrier and simply bounced off, their energy absorbed and redirected. Impossible, Vexthul whispered. Divine weapons cannot be turned aside by mortal technology. Your weapons aren't divine, Chen said over the comm. They're just physics, and we understand physics very well. The tide of battle began to turn. With their shields now adapted to enemy weapons, the Prometheus pressed forward. Her fighters continued their deadly dance around the orbital platforms, taking out weapon arrays one by one. Platform 5 is going critical, Hayes reported from his fighter. Their power core is overloading. All fighters, clear the area, Chen ordered. The massive orbital platform exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the night side of the planet. Below, for the first time in 3,000 years, one of the gods' sky temples had been destroyed. On the 12 worlds, something changed in the hearts of the Watchers. The gods could be hurt. The gods could be beaten. Maybe they weren't gods at all. Vexthul felt his certainty crumbling like sand. This cannot be happening. We are divine. We are eternal. We are... You're in trouble. Captain Chen cut him off. And if you don't stop this attack immediately, you're going to be in a lot more trouble. But Vexthul was beyond rational thought. Now, his entire reality was collapsing. If they were not gods, then what had they been doing for 3,000 years? What were they? Never, he screamed. We are gods. We will prove it by destroying everything. If we cannot rule as gods, then there will be nothing left to rule. All remaining HFY ships began powering their most destructive weapons. They would glass the planet, destroy the human ship, and start over somewhere else. They would remain gods, even if they had to burn the galaxy to prove it. Captain Chen saw the energy readings and realized what was happening. The false gods were choosing to destroy everything rather than admit they were wrong. All hands brace for impact, she announced shipwide. We're about to find out what humans are really made of. The final battle was about to begin. Across the 12 worlds of the Kepler 442 system, something extraordinary was happening. For the first time in 3,000 years, the enslaved populations were talking to each other. It had started small. A farmer on the third world whispered to his neighbor that the sky gods seemed less frightening when strange aliens called them names and shot back. A craftsman on the seventh world mentioned quietly that if the gods could be hurt, maybe they weren't really gods at all. But whispers have a way of becoming shouts. On the Prometheus, Captain Chen watched her tactical display as more HFY ships arrived from across the system. What had started as 6 vessels was now growing toward 20. The false gods were calling in everything they had. Captain, Dr. Webb called from his station. I'm picking up some interesting communications from the planets below. It seems our little demonstration has had an effect. What kind of effect? Webb grinned. The kind where enslaved populations start asking uncomfortable questions about their so-called gods. High Hierarch Vexthul stood in his command center, watching displays that showed growing unrest on every world in his empire. Crowds were gathering in city centers. Work teams were abandoning their posts. Some were even attempting to build weapons from farming tools and construction equipment. How is this possible? He demanded of his communications officer. The faithful have served obediently for millennia. Why do they rebel now? They have been listening to the human broadcasts, Hierarch. The aliens are transmitting detailed explanations of our technology to every world simultaneously. Vexthul pulled up one of the transmissions and listened in growing horror. Dr. Webb's voice came through clearly, explaining in simple terms how plasma weapons worked, how orbital platforms maintained position, and how force fields could be disrupted with the right frequency. Citizens of the 12 worlds, Captain Chen's voice followed Webb's explanations. You have been told that these beings are gods. They are not. They are people just like you who use advanced tools to maintain control. Those tools can be understood, countered, and defeated. This is forbidden knowledge, Vexthul shrieked. They cannot teach mortals the secrets of divine power, but the damage was already done. On every world, the most intelligent inhabitants were taking notes. Engineers who had been forced to work with primitive tools were suddenly understanding principles they had glimpsed, but never been allowed to study. Scientists whose research had been suppressed were seeing the mathematical foundations of technologies they had dreamed about, and they were angry. Sir, Vexthul's tactical officer reported nervously, we're detecting multiple explosions on the surface of World 7. It appears the inhabitants have sabotaged 3 of our ground installations. What? How? They seem to have built electromagnetic pulse devices from communications equipment. Crude, but effective against our older systems. Vexthul stared at the reports flooding in. After 3,000 years of keeping these populations helpless, they were becoming dangerous in a matter of hours. All because one human ship had refused to bow down. Hierarch, another officer called out. World 3 reports that a group of inhabitants has seized control of a transport shuttle. They're demanding to speak with the human liberators. And World 9 has organized work strikes in all major cities, added a third officer. They're refusing to provide tribute until the false gods prove their divinity through scientific demonstration rather than threats. The foundation of the Zethkari Empire was cracking, but Vexthul was beyond caring about foundations. If he could not rule as a god, he would at least die as one. Signal all ships, he commanded. We end this now. Prepare to glass every inhabited world in the system. His officers stared at him, in shock. Sir, that's over 50 billion people. 50 billion rebels, Vexthul corrected. If they will not worship us, they have no right to exist. The massive Zethkari fleet began to spread out, each group of ships taking position over one of the inhabited worlds. Their weapons powered up with energy readings that made the destruction of the earlier moon look like a firecracker. Captain Chen watched the deployment with growing dread. Her ship had fought bravely, but there was no way the Prometheus could protect 12 worlds against 20 enemy vessels. Captain, Torres said quietly, they're going to kill everyone. Chen closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with new determination. Not if we can help it. Dr. Webb, how long would it take to broadcast our shield frequency adaptation to the planets below? To teach them how to build electromagnetic shields? With their current technology level, weeks at minimum. We don't have weeks, we have minutes. Chen thought furiously, then smiled. But we don't need to teach them how to build shields. We just need to give them shields. Captain? Webb looked confused. The orbital platforms. They all have defensive systems, right? Powerful ones designed to protect them from exactly the kind of attack the Zethkari are about to launch? Webb's eyes widened. You want to turn the platforms against the ships? Can we do it? Their control systems are networked for efficiency, Webb said, fingers flying over his console. If I can crack their command protocols and inject a virus through their communication array, yes, I think we can do it. But we'll need to get close to their flagship. Chen looked at the tactical display. The Divine Retribution sat at the center of the enemy formation, its massive bulk bristling with enough weapons to crack continents. Then that's where we're going. All hands prepare for attack run on the enemy flagship. The Prometheus turned and accelerated directly toward the largest and most dangerous ship in the Zethkari fleet. It was exactly the kind of suicidal charge that no rational commander would ever attempt, which was exactly why it worked. Vexthul watched in disbelief as the human ship streaked toward his flagship. Are they insane? They cannot hope to destroy a ship this size. Sir, they're not targeting our weapons or engines, his tactical officer reported. They're heading straight for our communications array. Understanding hit Vexthul like a physical blow. Stop them! All ships protect the flagship! But the other Zethkari vessels were already in position over their target worlds, weapons charging for planetary bombardment. They could not abandon their positions quickly enough to help. The Prometheus dove through a storm of defensive fire, her shields flaring as enemy beams struck home. Pieces of hull plating tore away, and sparks flew from damaged systems. But still, she pressed forward. Now, Dr. Webb, Chen shouted over the sound of alarms. Webb triggered his virus, shooting it directly into the Zethkari communication system at point-blank range. For a moment, nothing happened. Then across the system, orbital platforms began to turn. Instead of hanging passively above their worlds, the massive structures began targeting the Zethkari ships. Their defensive systems, designed to protect against exactly this kind of orbital bombardment, powered up and began firing. What is happening? Vexthul screamed as his own defense platforms turned their weapons on his fleet. Captain Chen's voice came over the calm despite the chaos around her ship. I told you we understand your technology. That includes understanding how to use it better than you do. The battle became a three-way chaos as Zethkari ships found themselves caught between human fighters, their own rebellious platforms, and increasingly organized resistance from the planets below. The enslaved populations had learned fast, and they were not content to remain passive. Vexthul watched his empire collapse in real time. His ships were being destroyed by their own weapons. His subjects were in full revolt. His authority was crumbling like ancient stone. And through it all, one human ship continued to fight, refusing to yield even when facing impossible odds. For the first time in 3,000 years, Vexthul began to understand what he was facing. These humans were not like the species he had conquered before. They did not break when threatened. They did not bow when shown superior force. They fought back. And worse, they made others fight back too. The battle for the Kepler 442 system raged for 6 hours. When it finally ended, the silence was deafening. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, looking at what remained of the Zethkari fleet. Half their ships were destroyed, twisted, metal drifting in space. The others hung dead in space. Their crews either surrendered or fled. The massive orbital platforms now pointed their weapons outward, protecting the worlds they had once enslaved. Damage report, she called out. Hull, breaches on 12 decks, Torres replied. Main engines are offline. Life support is running on backup power, and we've lost most of our fighter squadron. Chen nodded grimly. The Prometheus looked like she'd been through a meat grinder, but she was still flying. More importantly, the planets below were safe. Captain, Dr. Webb said from his station, I'm receiving a transmission from the Zethkari flagship. Put it through. High Hierarch Vexthul's image appeared on the main screen. The being who had once commanded like a god now looked broken and confused. His forearms hung limply at his sides, and his voice was barely a whisper. I do not understand, he said. We had superior numbers, superior weapons, superior technology. How did we lose to a single ship? Captain Chen studied the alien leader for a moment before answering. You didn't lose to a ship, you lost to an idea. What idea? That people shouldn't bow down to bullies no matter how big their guns are. Vexthul was quiet for a long moment. Around him, his command center was dark, most systems shut down in surrender. Finally, he spoke again. What are you going to do with us now? Execute us? Enslave us as we enslaved others? Neither, Chen replied. We're going to give you something you never gave anyone else. Which is? A choice. On the 12 worlds below, celebrations were beginning. For the first time in 3,000 years, people walked freely under open skies without fear of divine punishment. They built fires that could be seen from space, not caring if their former gods disapproved. They spoke loudly in public squares, sharing ideas that had been forbidden for millennia, and they looked up at the stars not in fear, but in wonder. Captain, Torres reported, we're receiving thousands of messages from the planets. They want to thank us. Put one through, Chen said. A voice came over the comm, speaking in accented but clear English. Unknown ship, this is Kael'tar of the Third World. We have been listening to your broadcasts and learning your language. I was a farmer before today, now I think I want to be an engineer. Chen smiled. That's a fine choice, Kael'tar. The universe needs more engineers. Will you teach us? Will you show us how to reach the stars like you have? We'll share what we can, Chen replied. But the real work will be up to you. More voices joined the first. Scientists who wanted to study physics. Artists who wanted to create without fear. Children who wanted to learn about worlds beyond their own. The entire system was waking up after a sleep of 3 millennia. Vexthul listened to the transmissions with growing amazement. They do not hate us, after everything we have done? Some probably do, Chen said honestly, but most of them are too busy building new lives to waste time on hate. I do not understand your species, Vexthul said. You came here to help people you had never met. You fought battles you could not win. You freed slaves who meant nothing to you. Why? Chen thought about the question for a moment. It was something she had wondered about herself during the darkest moments of the battle. Because someone had to, she said finally. Because when you see people suffering and you have the power to help, you help. That's what people do for each other. But they were not your people. They are now. The words hung in the silence of space, profound in their simplicity. On the 12 worlds, beings who had lived in darkness for 3,000 years were seeing sunlight for the first time, and on the bridge of a damaged human starship, a captain who had never expected to be a liberator was learning what it meant to change the galaxy. What happens now? Vexthal asked. Now you decide who you want to be, Chen replied. You can keep trying to be gods, in which case we'll have to stop you again. Or you can choose to be people, and help fix the damage you've done. And if we choose to be people, then you'll find out what that really means. 3 days later, the UES Prometheus limped toward the edge of the system, her repairs barely complete enough for space travel. Behind her, the 12 worlds were busy building their new future. Some of the Zethkari had chosen to flee to distant stars. Others had chosen to stay and help with reconstruction. Vexthul had been among those who stayed. Captain, Torres called. From her station, we're receiving a message from Earth Command. They want a full report on what happened here. Chen smiled tiredly. Tell them we made first contact with a species that thought it was divine, and we taught them the difference between power and authority. Will they understand that? Probably not. But that's okay. Send them the full logs. They can figure it out for themselves. As the Prometheus prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, one final message came through from the system they were leaving. This is Kael'tar of the Third World, came the familiar voice. We have built our first electromagnetic shield generator using the principles you taught us. It is small and crude, but it works. We wanted you to know. Chen keyed the comm, herself. That's wonderful, Kael'tar. What will you build next? A school, came the reply, where children can learn about the stars without fear. We are going to call it the Chen Institute, if that is acceptable to you. Captain Chen felt tears in her eyes. That's very acceptable, thank you. No, Captain, thank you, for showing us that gods can be beaten by people who refuse to kneel. The Prometheus jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying her crew back toward Earth and new adventures among the stars. Behind her, 12 worlds continued their work of building a better future, and in schools across those worlds, children learned a new lesson that would be passed down through generations. That the most powerful force in the universe is not divine, authority, or advanced weapons. It's the simple refusal to bow down when someone calls themselves a god. Years later, when other species heard the story of what happened in the Kepler 442 system, they would shake their heads in amazement. How could one ship defeat an entire empire? How could mortals stand against gods? But those who knew humans understood. They knew that when humans see injustice, they fight it. When they see the innocent threatened, they protect them. When they see people calling themselves gods, they prove that gods bleed. And when asked why, they do such impossible things. They give the same answer Captain Chen gave in the depths of space, facing overwhelming odds to protect people she had never met, because someone had to. In the end, that was enough. It was always enough. The gods fell because humans refused to kneel, and the galaxy was better for it.